Chairs No Waiting, episode number 621, A Punch in the Nose and Schwamp. Two Chairs No Waiting is brought to you each week by the folks over at weaversdepartmentstore.com. Drop by over at Weavers and check out the brand new t-shirts they just got in and the 60th anniversary t-shirts. They got them both. So head over there and check it out, the 60th anniversary shirts. And they got some new ones that are called Mayberry Favorites. They have a really cool design on the front of all the characters from the Andy Griffith Show, but with no faces. Anyway, it looks pretty cool. Go check it out at weaversdepartmentstore.com and check out all the other stuff. Two Chairs No Waiting is also brought to you by donations from listeners like you. The executive producer of episode number 621 is Dixie Griffith. Hey, thank you, Dixie, and thank you for being here. I'm Alan Newsom, the host of Two Chairs No Waiting, and it's always great to spend some time in Mayberry with you. Wow, I've been doing this podcast for, a long time, and it's just always fun to just talk about the Andy Griffith Show. And today I was watching the case of the Punch in the Nose, the episode from the 5th season of the Andy Griffith Show, and I just had to talk about it tonight. Plus, we're going to talk a little bit about Mr. Schwamp, because a fella that does YouTube videos did a video not too long ago about Mr. Schwamp, and I just wanted to follow up with that and follow up with the episode I'd done years ago about Mr. Schwamp. And we're going to hear from Randy Turner. Okay, so let's get this thing going with the case of a punch in the nose. The case of the punch in the nose. Now, if you don't remember, that's from season 5. It's episode number 152. 152 of the Andy Griffith Show. It was originally aired back on March the 15th of 1965. And wow, what a great episode it is. It's one, I don't know if you can remember, but it starts off with Andy and Barney in the courthouse. They're in the courthouse and they're going through all the stuff that's in the filing cabinet. They're going through that. And of course, then the singing begins and they start singing. Oh, that's so good.
1939.
Well, throw it in the box.
So Barney doesn't like the fact that everything is all messed up. All the articles and all the stuff is not correct in the filing cabinets, and so he doesn't like it. And so he just keeps looking around and complaining about it. You know, that they're not in order. And
hey, listen to this.
They do give us this bit of information.
September 23rd, 1941, 2 p.m., Otis Campbell booked for intoxication at the Mayberry Garden Club flower show.
I don't see anything so strange about that. He's been stewed at every important function we've had in this town.
Yeah, now listen. Sentence suspended because it was defendant's first offense.
So there you go. The first offense of Otis actually getting gassed. And so that was Otis's first offense, and it was, let's see, that date, and they just said it. Of course, I can't remember it because I just heard it. You know, who knows? It was at 2 p.m. on September the 23rd, 1941, at the Mayberry Garden Club. So the Otis's first offense for being arrested for drinking. There it was, right there. Definitely something that just a little piece of history there. And it really is amazing as you watch these episodes, just how amazingly good the writing and everything was. So as they went through it all, you know, they kept going through all the cases, and Barney was trying to make sure all the cases were closed and they're in the right order and everything. And, you know, he just really got upset about it, that they found this case about Foley and Floyd, right? And Andy's just saying, hey, just forget about it. Just forget about it. He said, now this case occurred at 11:25 a.m. on August 9th, 1946. Now remember, this is 1965 as we're listening to this, 20 years later, nearly 19 and a half. The two people involved were Floyd Lawson, Mayberry's at the time new barber. So he was new He had just started somewhere around 1946 in the August time period. He had just started, and we'll hear a little bit about that in a second. But he was brand new, and of course the other person involved was Charlie Foley. Andy just tries to get him to forget it, and he says, "No, these people are still around. We need to get to the end of this." So they go over to the barbershop, and Floyd, in his normal way, starts talking about what it says on the sidewalk out there. You know.
See the paper this morning?
No.
Well, there's a little article. Robert Gribble and Emma Larch announced their coming nuptial.
Oh, that's interesting, Floyd. The reason Andy and me are here is
Did you ever see what's written in the cement outside the shop out there?
No.
No, well, go out there and take a look. And you too, buddy. Go ahead. Just see what's written in that cement out there.
Floyd, we are not here to look at what's written in the cement.
Well, what's written out there?
It says, Bobby Gribble hates Emma Larch. Some kid wrote that 11 years ago. And that sidewalk was first slave.
So, you know, Barney's trying to get to the end of all this stuff and get down to it, and
Hated Emma Larch.
they won't have anything to do with it.
Now they're
Andy
not
just
their
eggs
coming
Floyd on.
nuptial. Ain't life funny?
Floyd!
Can't you just see him way back in school? Well, him dunking her pigtails in the inkwell and hiding her pencils and making fun and everything. Oh, boy, she'll get even with him now.
Oh, so, and some of you may know or may not know that I do Floyd the Barber, and do him at events stuff. And I can't tell you how many times I say, "Hey, you see what it says on the sidewalk out there?" And Bobby Gribble hates him. I just love that entire scene is just one of my favorites. And so when I was watching this episode, it was just like, oh man, this is so great to hear Floyd. Ain't life funny? And if you watch it, as you're watching it, you see Andy. He is not taking this serious at all. He'd a lot rather hear about Bobby Gribble and Emma Larch.
Floyd, pay attention here. Now, I'm talking about assault.
Assault?
Yes, assault. Were you or were you not involved in an assault case with Mr. Foley on August 9, 1946?
It seems to me I do remember something about that.
Ange, please. All right, let's have it. Come on, get it off your chest.
So I've
You'll
always
feel a lot
think
better
something
after
must
you
be
do.
cut out
Just
right
come up,
there.
Andy.
How just come up,
Always
Andy.
going to the papers.
So Floyd don't want anything to do with it really either. And you know, as Barney gets all upset and he can't get everything, he can't get everybody to pay real attention to him. So he goes over to Foley's, and while he's over at Foley's, you know, Foley tells him what happened. You know, Floyd was a new barber. He says he was new at the time, and he you know, I fell asleep in the chair and I woke up and I had gotten a shave when I didn't ask for the shave. And, you know, Floyd was new at the time, and I guess he was trying to run up a bill. That's what he says. That's what he says as he's talking about it. And so Barney runs back over. Well, before Barney's found out all this stuff. And then this line, I love this line that they say after
I think
that.
if he'll cooperate, I think we can wrap this thing up.
He's wrapping it up with Foley, but here it
Don't
is.
worry about Barney Floyd. He gets a little excited about things sometimes, you know.
You know, I think his trouble is he's not married. Now, if he was married, these little things wouldn't bother him.
Yeah, I think his problem is he's not married. If he wasn't married, these little things wouldn't bother him. Oh, I just love that. That is just so classic. Of course, then, you know, Barney comes in and telling, he's reading subject sat in the chair and received a haircut, fell asleep when he's in the chair. Yeah, that sounds like Charlie. You know, he's always falling asleep in the chair. And then Barney says, and subject received a shave he did not ask for. So this is what happens.
Words were exchanged and subject was punched in the nose.
Well, who's subject?
Foley.
Foley said I punched him in the nose?
He did?
Oh, no, Barney, that isn't the way it happened. Now, he asked for that shave. I remember that distinctly.
Oh, your memory's coming back now, huh? Well, good.
Besides, if he says I punched him in the nose, he's telling an outright fib.
All right, Floyd.
That's as strong as Floyd gets. If he said I punched him in the nose, he's telling an outright fib. Oh man, what a great episode this is. So they go on through there and they're starting to try to figure out, what had happened, and so they go and they grab Foley and Goober, because Goober was there, but he was just a little boy. And Foley had mentioned that to Barney while they were over in the shop, over at Foley's shop when Barney was interviewing him. And so they bring Goober and Foley into the barber shop, and Andy and they're all sitting there in the barber shop. Andy's in the chair and Floyd is he's trying to cut Andy's hair. Andy again wants nothing to do with it. So Barney's trying to reenact the entire event. So he's trying to get Goober to sit down and tell what he saw. So here's what happened.
With you, Goober. Now this is important. Where were you when the argument began?
You mean way back that other time?
Yes, way back that other time.
Well, I don't know. I was just 5 years old.
All right, if you were waiting
He was just 5 years old. So he has him sit down
for a
here.
haircut, you must have been sitting over there, right?
So he sits down over by the wall over here. Goober sits down.
You had a direct view of the whole thing.
I was probably reading a comic book. I always read a comic book when I wait and get a haircut.
All right, then take a comic book. Now.
Well, could I have another, Barn? I've read this.
Goober, look, this is just pretending. Don't make any difference if you read it.
But I read it twice.
I read it twice. Oh, I just tell you, wow, who thinks up this stuff? It is just so awesome. And it's so much like Goober. I mean, Goober's character, it's just so in character. So as we know, everything goes along and people start punching each other in the nose. I mean, there's a whole list of people who get punched in the nose when this gets started, right? So Floyd gets upset with Foley right there in the barbershop, and you don't see it, but you hear Foley, "Oh, he punched me. He punched me. You saw it." And then nobody saw it because everybody had their back turned and was not looking, right? So Charlie ended up punching Goober in the nose. Otis punched Floyd in the nose because Otis is a distant relative of Foley. Goober punches Gilly Walker in the nose. Opie's best friend, Johnny Paul, he's Charlie Foley's nephew, by the way. He punches Opie in the nose. Lamar Tuttle, that's Floyd's cousin, punches Otis in the nose. And finally, a lady named Beth Ann telephones Andy and claims that an unnamed assailant punched her in the nose. And by this time, Andy's just had enough. Barney has caused trouble, dredging up hurt feelings and issues all over town. And so, Andy gets the guys together and they're in the courthouse and he wants to talk to them. And he makes Barney leave because Barney is not helping. So he said, "I think Goober should be here. I think Goober should be here with us." And so Andy says, "Go get him then." And so he leaves. And then Andy talks to Foley.
Maybe it's a good thing Barney left.
And Floyd.
Maybe now we can settle this thing like friends.
Friends, huh? Do friends punch you in the nose?
Do friends call you a crook?
Well, you are a crook. You
What?
aren't any better now than you ever were.
Charlie.
Wait a minute. Now let's not start the whole thing all over again.
So Andy is able to calm them down. He talks to them. He goes through this whole thing about them being friends for so long, and
Friendship is to be ready to forgive. I know you're both sore about what happened yesterday, but I don't believe anything that's happened couldn't be made right by a warm, forgiving handshake. Do you?
Floyd and Foley kind of just
Well, do
look at
you?
each other. And
Charlie, that's just about the same thing that Sheriff Poindexter said to us 19 years ago.
That's right, it was.
Well, what happened then?
Well, we shook hands, didn't we, Charlie?
That's right. We did.
And then I invited him over for a free shave.
That's what happened.
Well, if it worked then, I don't see any reason why it couldn't work now.
so Foley and Floyd shake hands and all is well and everything's good. And as you know, Barney comes back with Goober and he goes over to the barbershop and you don't know what happened other than he went over there and he comes back holding his nose and because he's gotten punched in the nose. So So as I was watching that, it's so funny. I enjoy it so much. And honestly, I was really watching the end there where Andy is standing in front of these two grown men and telling them, look, you've been friends for too long. You've known each other. You've worked right beside each other. You've been working beside each other for over 20 years. And there's nothing here that can't be fixed by just agreeing that things are okay. And shaking hands. And as I was watching that, I was just like, wow, do we need an Andy Taylor? We need one in this world today, do we not? Just tell everybody, hey, just stop it. Stop. Don't let Barney get you all riled up. Don't let him be getting you all frustrated and everything and upset. Just shake hands. Agree that you're going to disagree a little bit, and let's just go on with life and make the best out of it. Because that's what they did 20 years ago, and then they did it again at this point. And luckily, the next time, evidently, when somebody started try to make trouble with them, which was when Barney came back and he went over to the barbershop to try to find out, it's as open as it ever was. You remember all that? He comes back holding his nose, basically, there at the end. So he comes back. He comes back from the barbershop. Andy and Goober are out in out there watching him walk back, coming into the courthouse. And it's just like, wow, we really need more of that, don't we? Stop letting people get you upset with one another. So anyway, that's the first part of the stuff I wanted to talk about tonight. The next thing I wanted to mention was about Mr. Schwamp. So the episode's called A Punch in the Nose and Mr. Schwamp, and Schwamp is what it says, just Schwamp. Well, there's a guy named Dave Sundstrom. He does a YouTube channel that he kind of visits all kinds of different television and movie things, but mostly television, older television shows that he visits. And one of them he does fairly often is the Andy Griffith Show. Well, about 2 weeks ago, he did one that was about Mr. Schwamp. And it said, Andy never told a soul, the mysterious case of the strange Mr. Schwamp. So Dave went through, it's a nice video. So if you don't watch that, I'll have a link for it in the show notes so you can go and check it out and check out Dave's stuff. He's got a lot of nice stuff on there, and he's mentioned me on his podcast a few times, or his video shows on YouTube a few times. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Dave. But he is talking about who is Mr. Schwamp. Well, I have covered things before here on the podcast about Mr. Schwamp, but I was looking back, and the last time I did anything like that was in July the 6th, 2010, evidently. It was the last episode I did about Mr. Schwamp. So almost 11 years ago. It's episode number 91, Mayberry Man of Mystery. It's before I even started doing video versions of the podcast. And it talks about Mr. Schwamp. Now, Mr. Schwamp is... he's a citizen of Mayberry. We all see him. Maybe you've never seen him, but if you're seeing the video version, I've got a picture of him up. But if you can't remember who he is, you can go to mayberry.info. And when you get there, just search Mr. Schwamp, and it's SCHWAMP, Schwamp. Originally, we all thought his name was spelled Schwamp with a W, so it was SCHWUMP, but that was incorrect because Jim Clark was able to find an actual script. He and Ken Beck, I think maybe have been both of them, but they found a script where it was actually spelled out Mr. Schwamp, and it's SCHWAMP. Now he is he's an older, dark-haired man, if you can't picture him and you're not able to see the video, who's always sitting on the bench outside the barbershop or in a group of people there in Mayberry. He's there very often. And it's a mystery, and has been a mystery forever, as to who this man is. Nobody has been able to figure it out. And that's one of the things Dave mentions. Now, Dave does say, hey, Ron Howard might know, but Ron Howard has been queried about this. And he does know all of the actors and all of the actresses and all the production people that we have ever been able to talk to. They remember Mr. Schwamp. They don't know who he is or what his name was, his real name, but they remember him. And with no problem whatsoever. They know who we're talking about, but nobody knows who he is. That includes Ron Howard. He's been asked. Ron's dad was asked before he passed away. Like I said, they remember him, but nobody can remember what his real name was. Andy Griffith was asked. The producer, Andy's manager, Richard Link, he had been asked. So basically, over the years, every cast and crew member of the Andy Griffith Show that anybody has had any good contact with have been asked if they know the actor's name that played Mr. Schwamp, and nobody does. And I mean, that really is kind of surprising that nobody has been able to figure out who he is. Now, he was in 26 episodes of the Andy Griffith Show, 26 different episodes. Ranging from about episode number 112 all the way down to 247. So he was in a lot of seasons of the Andy Griffith Show. Now, he was not in The Case of a Punch in the Nose, but he was in the next episode, which was The Luck of Newton Monroe. He was in that because I was trying to tie the two together, but he wasn't in this episode. But he was in so many episodes of the show, and he appeared on Gomer Pyle as well. So all this information is out there. If you go and check it out, you can go to mayberry.info and then just search for Mr. Schwamp, and you'll find it. Now, one of the things, and Dave mentions it too, I just want to bring it up. His real name was not Patch S. Wimmer. Okay. That was not his name. On April 1st, 2012, the Andy Griffith Show Reunion Watchers Club played an April Fool's joke on the visitors to the Facebook page. Okay. That basically said they've discovered Mr. Schwamp's identity, but it wasn't true. It was a April Fool's joke. That April Fool's joke is also published at mayberry.info, and you can read it and go down through there. And I can tell you, I still have to tell people that this was not real, that is not his name, that he is not actually, his name is not Patch S. Schwimmer. The letters of Patch S. Schwimmer make the words Mr. Schwamp if they're arranged in a different order. That's where the name came from. Okay, so I'm not going to blame who did this. But it's been, what's this been? Almost 10 years, and we're still answering this question. But it is not done. And it was very successful April Fool's joke. So, but that's what it was. So nobody knows the name of the actual Mr. Schwamp. Nobody knows it, which is just absolutely, really is amazing that nobody knows the name of him. So that's Mr. Schwamp. If you have an idea who he is, that would be great. But please realize we have already asked everybody, Bruce Bilson, everybody that we can possibly think of to ask has been asked. Obviously somebody out there must know, it's somebody's grandparent or somebody's, relative in some way. And they're proud that they see their relative on the Andy Griffith Show and don't realize that none of us know who he is. And it's kind of one of those things. It's kind of like catching old Sam. If we ever find out, I don't know, it's going to be kind of sad because that mystery will be gone. It won't be around to talk about. It's kind of like when they caught old Sam, there from the lake, and they ended up letting him go again so that they could try to catch him again, right? Because it was just, everybody was always trying to catch old Sam. And when it was actually had been done, it just kind of took the fun out of going fishing. And I think it won't take the fun out of watching the Andy Griffith Show, but it'll be just a mystery that's solved. And, oh, well, now we know that. We'll have to come up with a different mystery, but Mr. Schwamp. Nobody knows who he is. All right, so let's move along now and hear from Randy Turner with This Week in Mayberry History.
Welcome to This Week in Mayberry History, a report by Special Correspondent Randy Turner of the Gomer and Cooper Pyle Comic Book Literary Guild of the Mayberry Historical Society.
A true Renaissance man of early television, Sheldon Leonard was a successful actor, writer, director, and producer who literally is the man credited with having created the Andy Griffith Show. This is the first of 4 installments to take a close look at how Sheldon's career led him to be in the position to create the classic Mayberry series. Sheldon was born on February the 22nd, 1907 in Manhattan, but grew up in the South Bronx. His salesman father moved the family to New Jersey in 1919 when Sheldon was 12. The 2 years they lived there were difficult, as Sheldon was initially picked on for being Jewish, then became a bully himself to combat the treatment. After the family moved back to New York City, they resided in Lower Manhattan. Sheldon met a friend named Joe Bromberger, who had already decided he wanted to be an actor. The two began seeing many Broadway matinees together, with discount tickets costing only 55 cents a show. Inspired by Joe's love of acting and their theater experiences, Sheldon decided he wanted to begin acting himself. Sheldon attended Syracuse University on an athletic football scholarship. While there, he continued to act and became president of the university's Dramatic Society, while also forming his own repertory company. After graduating in 1929, he took his first real job as an apprentice with a Wall Street brokerage firm. His first day of work was October the 24th, 1929, a day that came to be known as Black Thursday when the stock market began its crash. Within a few weeks, the firm literally no longer existed. The event precipitated the Great Depression of the 1930s. Sheldon worked a number of odd jobs, including managing movie theaters. In 1932, he ran into his old high school friend who had inspired him to act. His friend, who now went by J. Edward Bromberg, was part of what was to become the group theater and convinced Sheldon to pursue acting. Sheldon spent the rest of the decade concentrating primarily in theater. In 1934, he was cast in his first Broadway show, the comedy Hotel Alimony. It closed after only 6 performances, but the reviewers gave Sheldon good reviews. Sheldon made his film debut in a Shemp Howard short, My Mummy's Arms, in June 1934, then filmed the musical short The Gem of the Ocean, which was released in November. Incredulously, in his next film role, Sheldon played a black man in Wonga, an early zombie movie believed to be only the second zombie movie ever made. The film was not released until 1936, but was Sheldon's first credited role in a feature-length film. But Sheldon returned to Broadway, first appearing in 1934 in the short-lived play The Night Remembers. His next show was a success. He originated the role of Gabriel, a Portuguese fisherman, in Fly Away Home, which opened January the 15th, 1935, and ran until the beginning of July. Sheldon continued a successful Broadway career throughout the decade, while also doing national tours of shows which had originated on Broadway. In the middle of his Broadway work, he was given an opportunity that opened up another of his future careers. He directed a tour of the play Having a Wonderful Time. After filming another short subject film, he was cast in his last Broadway production, Kiss the Boys Goodbye. The show was directed by Antoinette Perry, or Tony Perry, in whose honor the Tony Awards are named. The show was yet another hit. It opened on September the 28th, 1938, and Sheldon stayed in it through its 8-month run. After Kiss the Boys Goodbye closed, Sheldon flew to Hollywood to begin in earnest the next phase of his career. After filming the 1939 movie Another Thin Man, an installment of the Thin Man film franchise based on Dashiell Hammett's novel The Thin Man, Sheldon came to realize that he would have more opportunities in the burgeoning film business. He had developed a character type of a gangster heavy who talked with a strong Brooklyn accent, and realized there was a demand for just such characters in the film industry. And so he moved his family to California in August 1940. We'll continue a deep dive into Sheldon Leonard's career next week. And that's all for this week. As always, thanks for listening, and remember to take care of yourselves, take care of one another, and take Andy's advice, and go out there and act like somebody.
Thank you, Randy. And wow, I can't wait to hear more of these stories about Sheldon Leonard. What an amazing man. If you want to make sure you don't miss out on anything that Randy's doing related to the Andy Griffith Show online, send him an email at turnersgrade@gmail.com. turnersgrade@gmail.com, and he'll make sure you don't miss out on anything. Folks, I hope you have enjoyed the show tonight. It was a lot of fun. Dave Sundstrom, I hope you guys will go and check out his videos because he does have some really neat videos about the Andy Griffith Show, and I think you'll enjoy them. One of the things he does mention in his Mr. Schwamp video is that there were some behind-the-scenes shots that were supposed to have been possibly Mr. Schwamp. Those are not Mr. Schwamp. We've looked into those. That's not him. It's the videos that the Howard family had shot from behind the scenes that have been on the internet. You've seen them on there. They were on the Blu-ray version of the Andy Griffith Show releases they did a few years ago. But those are online on YouTube, I believe. But that was not Mr. Schwamp in those pictures. I forgot who it was, but it was not him. We were able to determine that. So I want to remind you to go check that out. And don't forget about the 9th annual Mayberry Meetup that's coming up in July. So it's the third weekend in July of 2021. It's pretty much always the third weekend in July. And that is the 16th and 17th and 18th of July. So definitely want to encourage you to head there. There's a link in our show notes for a form you can fill out to make sure you're registered, and make sure you get yourself a hotel room and all that stuff. Doesn't really cost you anything to come, but you're gonna have. We like to know that you're coming. So that's what that is. So the meetup it was really started 9 years ago when I was going to Mount Airy to interview Betty Lynn for the podcast, and as part of that, I said, hey, while we're in Mount Airy, if anybody's going to be there, let's meet up. And we had, 20, 30 people showed up, and it's just grown since then. This will be our 9th year. So I invite you to come and just spend a very relaxing weekend in Mount Airy, not to over-expect anything, but just to have a good time. And also remember to check out mayberrydevotional.com that Brian Rose is doing. It's great, and other podcasts you might enjoy. All right, well, that's all I've got this evening. I would love to hear from you. You can give me a call at 888-684-8415, and let me hear what you think about the podcast, what you think about the show, thoughts about the Andy Griffith Show. I would love to hear from you, and so would other people that listen to the podcast. So let me hear from you. And just give me a call at 888-684-8415. You can also email me at floyd@imayberry.com. And if you can't remember any of that, just head over to twochairsnowaiting.com and you can find all of it there. Folks, have a great Mayberry week, and we'll see you next time right here on Two Chairs.